So coming on to the evidences of evolution, you can see that there are comparative and anatomical evidences, morphological evidences, and microbiological evidences. So in that, when you try to see about the homologous evidences, when you see the homology indicates that common ancestry. Here, homologous indicates same structure but developed along different directions due to adoptions due to different needs. So in this, we can see the examples like bat, man, whale, and cheetah. So in this, when you see onto the hind limbs, four limbs, you can see that all the four limbs are modified. They have common ancestry, that is mammals. But when you see onto these, all the structures are like humerus, ulna, radius, phalangeals, metatarsal, phalangeals, etc. all look same, and they are functionally, they are showing different variations. Apart from this, all hearts are vertebrates, all brains are vertebrates, and in plants, thorns of bougainvillea, as well as the cucurbitaceae, you can see that they are modified. They are modified similar homology but different structures and different functions. So here with this we can see that when you come on to the evidences of evolution in concern to the molecular evidences, proteins and blood proteins in all animals and animal proteins in the are also such serving as a important differences. Coming on to the comparative anatomy, analogous structures, you can see that penguin, dolphin, butterfly, bird. These are having the similar functions, but they are having the different ancestry. So your ancestry is separate. Here you can see that you should remember the code functionally analogous convergent evolution, and in the case of homologous you can see that shed consists of BMW car. B stands for the bat, M stands for the man, W stands for the whale, C stands for the cheetah. Likewise, analogous, you can see that wings of butterfly, we can see the wings of the butterfly and birds, eyes of octopus and mammals, flippers of penguins and dolphins, wings of bat and birds, sweet potato and potato are the structures where in the case of the sweet potato is a modified root, but potato is a modified stem. So in this way, but both the functions are same. This type of evolution is called as analogous evolution, and it is a convergent evolution. And in this only you can also see that the contribution of human beings is very high towards the evolution. By breeding, animals like dogs and other animals plays a major role in evolution. And another interesting observation supporting the evolution by natural selection comes from England, that is through the Charles Darwin. And you can also see that a natural selection process by which anthropogenic evolution, that is man-made evolution in the case of Biston betullaria, that is the Biston betullaria, that is in the case of the Biston betullaria, that is peppered moth. You can also see that the resistance of the animals towards the pesticides is also an example of analogous anthropogenic evolution. When you talk about the adaptive radiation, means the process of evolution of different species in a given geographical area starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography is called adaptive radiation. In this, Darwin finches are the good examples of, and here you are going to see that a method to identify the fossils. Fossils are also serving as one of the good sources of evolution by a method called as radio dating method, which can identify the samples up to 65,000, 68,000 years. You know, the method is called radioactive dating method, and comparative physiology and comparative fossicular animals with the present day animals. You can also get the evidences and embryological evidences having the gifts in the embryonic stages of different animals is also serving as an example for evolution. So in this particular case, you can see the Biston betullaria. First, peppered moths lichens were present, which is given the white color. But once the industrial revolution has started, the plants changed from the dark pepper moth were dominated because of prey predator relationship. As a result, before industrialization, white were benefited, and after industrialization, the black were benefited. And you can also see that the resistance of pesticide development by the certain animals is also one of the example. And you can also see that staphylococcus aureus, which generally on the cheeks and the mucal, also is undergoing the resistivity. In this particular phenomenon, in this, we can see that how the biological evolution organisms occurred. So, evolution is generally defined by as defined by many of the evolutionists was in that the pioneering was the Charles Darwin, where he has worked in the Galapagos Islands, worked on the Darwin finches, which were later renamed as Darwinian finches, and these were mainly on the. These are two types. That is, one is the adaptive divergence, adaptive convergence. Here, adaptive divergence is the animals of the same or closely related group exhibit greater divergence in their morphology when found in different habitat. Like the Galapagos Islands is a good example, and here you can see the beaks, which are worm eating beaks as well as the plant eating beaks, and which are coming on to the adaptive convergence. Convergent evolution is of different ancestors, animals of unrelated species that only are not common ancestor. Animals of unrelated groups occupying the same habitat exhibit common features. So the good example of adaptive convergence is marsupials. The good example of adaptive divergence is Darwinian finches. So in this particular phenomenon, you can also see that generally when you describe the story of the world, we describe the evolution is a process. In this, we need to come across one important phenomenon called as uh, continental drift theory. Continent moving, drift means moving. Continents are moving from their original positions where it has been as now. Because of this, there is a physical, physiological function as well as the other barriers also led to the separation of the animals. As a result of this, you can see that the South American fauna and flora were has been declined, and the North American flora and fauna has benefited, and some of the sea animals also got benefited. So when you come to the mechanism of evolution, when you talk about the mechanism of evolution, in the mechanism the reason in the mechanism of revolution, so you can see that when you take the bacteria which is named as bee, generally they are growing in some conditions, but when they are transferred to a another conditions, the chances of some most of the bacteria decline. As a result of this, most of the bacteria declinement in the series, some organisms have been benefited and they started giving their progeny to the future generations as a result. So here, when you talk about evolution, evolution is a continuous slow process according to the Darwin, but evolution is a single large step mutation according to the Hugo de Vries. Here we need to talk about the Hugo de Vries. Hugo de Vries is also called as a father of mutational theory, and this was and this is one of the good example. And when you talk about the natural selection, here in the natural selection you can see that natural resources are only limited. The size of the population is stable except for seasonal variations, and there is variation in the different part of the organisms and different sources. Now, when you talk about as we have discussed, by combining all the theories into an unit, and so according to the evolutionist, evolution is a slope, evolution is a directional, evolution is a directional, and evolution is also a stable process. But according to the Hugo de Vries, evolution is a non-random, non-directional, and single large step mutation. So in this, to explain this evolution theory, two mathematicians of mathematical probabilities, Hardy and Weinberg, has proposed a equation called as Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. In this Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, so alleles are the units which are now considered as genes, which are responsible for the genotypic frequencies. So they will be transferred from one generation to the other generation through the from the parents to their progeny. So because of this, Hardy-Weinberg law tried to explain that the gene pool is a sum total of all genes present in a sexually reproducing organism during a given period of time. That is, this 50 years means the gene pool of India is called the complete population with their genetical abilities. As a result, that is because of the conditions which are suitable for Hardy-Weinberg law, which is explained as conditions. It occurs in very large populations when there are no mutations, when there is a random mating and non-occurrence of migrations and natural selection. So the Hardy-Weinberg has given a mathematical binomial expression, where p square plus 2pq plus q square is equal to 1, where p square is equal to dominant alleles, that is AA, plus 2pq is equal to 2 into p means capital A, that is dominant allele, q means uh, q means recessive allele, plus q square means the recessive allele A is equal to 1, where mathematical the sum total of all the allelic frequencies here is obviously binomial expression is 1. So in these frequencies will be transferred from the parent to the offspring, where one gets from one single parent, one gets the dominant allele A, and there is a possibility of getting then their equation will of them will become zero point 0.5 each. So here the frequency of allele is transmitted, but here where you have taken the AA, P is equal to frequency of dominant allele A, Q is equal to frequency of recessive allele A, and when you construct on these only on the AA, which is a dominant, that is P into P is equal to P square, that is homozygous dominant, and in the that is the locus, the gene present on the allele present on a gene locus at a particular position. And when you talk about the heterozygous, you can see that's capital A with small a. As a result, you can see that heterozygous condition. And because of this, based on this, the derivation dominant allele means AA, recessive means small a, plus 2 into heterozygous means capital A into small a. Then, based on this equation, the construction of the binomial expression p square plus q square plus 2p cube is equal to 1, where the change in the allelic frequencies may lead to the form of genetical differences. As a result, you can see that the based on these factors, when the Hardy-Weinberg principle is not is affected, when there is a gene migration and when there is a genetic drift, that is gene changes, movement, mutations, that is single loss of mutation, and genetical recombination and natural selection. Based on these conditions, they try to explain. So there is a possibility of asking one question from this particular chapter. And now moving on to the disruptive. So, in the case of the Hardy-Weinberg principle, three bell jars were drawn where the mean value in the middle is called as a stabilization. Means most of the organisms are succeeding in this, and the black color here indicates that the organisms have been destroyed before they passes their genes to the next progeny. In the directional, that is moving towards the one. In the stabilization, the survival of most of the people in England, who are around 3.5 kgs to 4 kgs, and the directional, the insects getting the resistance towards the different types of diseases, different type of pesticides and disruption, growing of two different populations which are originated from the similar, that is sunflower family in California, which is a dry country, and Los Angeles, which is a wet place. So here stabilization, the bell jar in the middle will be mean value. And coming on to the a brief account of evolution, when you see onto the brief account of evolution, so the evolution almost approximately occurred, which are the chemoheterotrophs to blue-green algae to protist, and the, so the time span which the organisms evolved on this earth surface from the evolution, from the life starting to now, is called as geological time scale. This geological time scale is divided into Precambrian eon and Phanerozoic eon, which again divided into Haldian, Archean, Proterozoic, and Paleozoic, where we are most important with this Paleozoic era, Mesozoic era, and Cenozoic era. So in the first phase, that is the Paleozoic era, which approximately last from 248 million year 570 million years to 248 million years, we can see that there are several stages of that. That is Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian period, where these organisms have evolved. At the same time, in the next to that Mesozoic era, again divided into the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous period. In this, where the sea lilies, mollusks, and sea scorpions has evolved. At the same time, the stews also evolved, which are considered to be the like Cephalitis, hemiclapsis also evolved during this period, and the sharks and stingrays also evolved during the Mesozoic era, and many of the animals which are dead in the Carboniferous period has fell into the coal deposits, and whatever the fish you are seeing here is a ancestor of the vertebrates. So this is also called as lungfish or lungfish, like Proteoptes neocordatus. And you can see that the Cleocon is the fish which is considered to be extinct, but which is also known as the living fossil. And you can see that the salamanders has been evolved during the Mesozoic, first phase of the Mesozoic era, which led, and the reptiles were the first reptiles originated and they started living on the terrestrial life. And you can also see that there are several animals evolved during the Mesozoic era and started living till now also. The reptilians are divided into four classes. So based on this, some of the reptilian animals also ventured into the water and they started the how being given rise to the water reptiles like Icthopisaurus, crocodile, and so on. And whatever you are seeing, the Tyrannosaurus Rex is the highest, biggest animal which is present, which is having 20 feet height and also having the dagger like 6 feet dagger like teeth. Coming to the evolution of humans, so we know that we have been there are seven different stages of the Dryapithecus, Ramapithecus, Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, Neanderthalis, Cro-Magnon, and Homo sapiens. In this Homo sapiens neanderthalis is considered to be the direct ancestor of the man, and it also says about the anthropology, the study of animals, and paleontology, study of uh, fossil animals, and molecular biology. So here, these are four considered to be the common ancestors of the human beings, and you are seeing this is the Australopithecus, where Dryopithecus animals lived in the Africa and Europe and some part of the Asians. They are almost like the chimpanzees and gorillas, and they are having the bigger canine teeth comparatively to the humans, but they are comparatively bigger than the human tooth and not strong as the human teeth. When you compare the skull of the Dryopithecus with the modern apes, so you can see that there are certain similarities. And Ramapithecus lived, these are present in the Shivalik hills of India and Eastern African countries. And Ramapithecus probably found in the Ethiopia and Tanzania. And Australopithecus, you can see that these are found in the East African islands. These are the first to eat, hunt, and eat, probably ate foods. But Homo habilis skull was the teeth were comparatively smaller than that, and the brain capacity also started increasing, that is approximately 900. And in the 1891 in the Java and different places of the, they have found a skull which was named as Homo erectus java men. So they also probably they are having the 1200 cc of brain. And we can also see that the Homo sapien Neanderthalis is considered to be these were obtained in the Neanderthal Valley of the East Germany, and they are considered to be the direct ancestor of man. They are having the 1200 to 1600 of brain, and because of the Cro-Magnon man, they buried the dead bodies and they started using the hideouts because of the Cro-Magnon who lived, who is also called as Homo sapien fossilis, the Neanderthal man might have been perished. So when you see onto the Homo sapien fossils, they are found in the Italy and France, and they were great dealers. The Cro-Magnon lived between 75 to 10 PB, and the Homo sapiens, which has started agriculture around 10,000 and 18,000 years ago, cave art describes the characteristic feature of human beings. health is considered as a one of the physical, mental, and social well-being is called as health. So when a person is not feeling well, it may be a temporary or a permanent condition, then the person is called as a diseased condition. So generally diseases are two types. One is infectious diseases, means which can be transmittable from one person to the other person, and non-infectious diseases which cannot be transmitted from one person to the other. The non-infectious diseases are cancer, BP, infectious are salmonella typhi, COVID, malaria, and so on. And generally, AIDS is also one of the transmittable diseases. When you see that parasite or pathogens are the microorganisms which causes the diseases from one person to the other person, there are several types of organisms which causes that is microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, fungi, helminth, parasites. So in that salmonella typhi is one of the uh, Salmonella typhi is one of the organism which causes the typhoid disease, that is also called as enteric fever, and it will be contaminating. It is because of food contamination, water contamination, and other contaminants. And in this, we need to know about a personality known as Typhoid Mary, which is nicknamed as Typhoid Mary. Original name was Marilyn Mary, which was generally suffer professional cook, which and due he has never passed the disease to the other people, passed the disease, but she never got. During the common symptoms of typhoid, you can see that high fever, weakness, stomach pain, constipation, headache, and loss of appetite. And the test used for the typhoid is Vidal test. You can also see that some common infectious diseases are Streptococcus pneumonia. In influenza causes pneumonia, and these are generally bacterial borne diseases. And you can also see that there is a comparative differences between the pneumonia and common cold. Common cold is caused by rhinovirus, but pneumonia can be caused by the different species of bacterium and some other viruses also. So generally, in the case of normal alveoli, we cannot. There will be no concession of that. You can also see that generally, which may lead to the cough, and there is certain times change in the color of the lips as well as the fingers. You can see that this can be spread by contaminated of different sources of materials, and it will be passed from one person to the other person if it does that. So generally when you come onto the viral diseases, you can see that rhinovirus causes commonly common cold, and because of which you can see that high fever, so nose running as well as sore throat and other important. So in order to eradicate that, droplet infection should be stopped. So there are certain particular differences between the pneumonia and common cold. Common cold is not infecting the lungs, but whereas pneumonia will be infecting the lungs. So the other possibilities of passage of diseases is use towels, combs, and cloths. So pathogens can be of protozoan, bacterial, virus, fungi, and helminthic parasites. So the one of the most important diseases is malaria. Malaria is caused by three species, that is Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium falciparum. So female Anopheles mosquito will inject from a infected person by taking them into them, and by biting the other healthy person releases the sporozoites, which are the infective phases where they enter into the liver cell. They undergo the pre-erythrocytic cycle followed by the erythrocytic cycle, and they will release the toxin called as hemozyne. And once the person, the female Anopheles mosquito bites the infected person, the sporozoites will enter into the womb of the mosquito. As a result, they will be differentiated and the sporozoites will be converted into merozoites, and they will be accumulated in the salivary glands and waiting for the next infection. So malaria is one of the most important, most widely spread diseases in India also. Apart from that, entamoeba histolytica, which is also the generally caused to the uh, large intestine, which will be because of which bloody stool motions and diarrheic conditions will exist, and stomach pain also exists. So these are all to eradicate them. Generally, we need to eradicate the vectors. Vectors are the organisms which are responsible for carrying the pathogens from one host to the other host, or contaminating the food by fecal matter with other things. So your personal hygiene and public hygiene should be maintained in order to eradicate these diseases. So use of mosquito repellents, use of gambusia like fishes to kill the larvae of the animals is also one of the important measures to control diseases. And in the case of infectious diseases, you can see that so it may lead to the infection. There are two types of immunity. Immunity is the ability of the organism to sustain from the diseases by producing their. So here there are two types of immunities. One is called innate immunity, one is called acquired immunity. Innate immunity is by birth immunity, and acquired immunity during the course of time. Innate immunity can be of four types: physical barriers, physiological barriers, cellular barriers, and cytokine barriers. So skin and mucosal epithelium are considered to be the physical barriers. Physiological barriers, saliva of the mouth and tears, as well as the HCl of the body, can be considered as the physiological barriers. And coming on to the cellular barriers, the WBC, RBC, and other cellular components called as a cellular barriers, and cytokinal barriers like polynuclear leukocyte, that is PMNL, or natural lymphocytes or monocytes are considered to be the cytokinal barriers. Macrophages, and here cytokinal barriers are meant for graft rejection. And coming to the acquired immunity is of two types. One is called primary immune response, the second is called as secondary immune response. Primary cells means when a weak antigens are exposed to the body identifies that and produces the antigens to that. And when the second time the same microorganisms are entered, they are antigen specific, and they will fight on that and they will kill the organism. So vaccines are based on this particular principle, and the T lymphocytes are also will be producing this type of. So T lymphocytes are produced by the thymus, B lymphocytes are produced by the different parts of the body. B lymphocytes are helped by the T lymphocytes in giving the energy to the system. You can also see that antibodies are generally produced by our body in response to the antigens. And here we can see the two long chains, two short light chains. So long chains are also called as heavy chains. So the formula of them is H2L2. And generally these are of four types: IgA, IgM, IgE, IgG. IgD is also there, that is equivalent to the IgG. And here you again the acquired immunity is of two types. One is called as humoral immunity response, one cell mediated response. Humoral response is a type of response which is by body or acquired characters, and cell mediated immunity is during the graft rejections like organ transplantation. So here we need to check about the different things like close relatives and blood groups are also taken care of these. And in the cell mediated, those who are gone for the organ transplantation, the body will try to identify and kill them. So they should use completely immunosuppressants to entire life to in order to come over the effect. Now coming on to the active immunity lymphocytes. So immunization plan is based on the active immunity, and it is also acquired from the mother to the baby through placenta. So immunity can be innate, acquired, active, and passive. Active means generally primary immune response. Already we have discussed that. So here when an antigenic proteins of pathogens are weakened, that is called active immunity, and these will support the memory cells, IgM cells, to control the disease like tetanus where performed antibodies are used, and in the case of snake bite also performed antibodies are used. Nowadays a recombinant DNA technology is used where we are getting the revac vaccines for the certain malaria or certain other diseases. So the one of the autoimmune response diseases are rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis, and generally a person. So coming on to the MALT, mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, also called as, it is 50 percentage of the body which is urinary tract, which controls from the openings of our body like mucosa, mouth and urinary tract, and it constitutes the 50 percentage of the body friction. Coming on to the AIDS is caused by the retroviridae family member. It will be transferred because of many partners, and blood transfusion used needles are and from mother to the baby. So we'll stop for the day. You can read the next topic and we will just try to integrate that.